In today's episode, Dr. Jennifer Roback Morse joined host Bill Castle from Free Expressions. Together, they dove into the controversial activities of the Southern Poverty Law Center. The discussion centers around recent allegations against the SPLC, including fraud and money laundering, and explores the impact these accusations have on conservative organizations. Dr. Morris expresses hope that the recent legal actions against the SPLC will lead to a shift in how corporate America views the organization's influence.
I'm Bill Castle, and this is Free Expression. This program is all about conveying the Christian message from a Catholic point of view and defending the liberty which makes it possible to do that. We look at charges of criminality against an organization that's hostile to Christian values. The media write about some movement that isn't on board with the current progressive worldview. It's often described as right-wing or reactionary or conspiracy-driven or even as a hate group. And the justification given for such an assessment is usually that the organization in question is listed by the Southern Poverty Law Center. For a long time now, I've had the feeling that something wasn't quite right with the SPLC. A lot of the organizations they were impugning I knew to be legitimate conservative think tanks or traditional Christian ministries or perfectly authentic grassroots political movements. So I concluded that the SPLC was blindly following a typical leftist agenda. Now, though, it's been charged that the SPLC isn't just ideological, it may have been actually criminal. The Department of Justice alleges that the Southern Poverty Law Center has defrauded its donors, laundered money, even paid questionable groups to instigate violent demonstrations. My guest, Jennifer Roback Morse, has had the dubious honor of being spotlighted by the Southern Poverty Law Center. Her organization, the Ruth Institute, has held a secure place in the SPLC Rogues Gallery for some time now. Jennifer, given your experiences with the SPLC, what are your thoughts on these new allegations?
Well, I was very heartened to see that the Department of Justice has taken a close look at these guys, because we've known for some time that there was something a little bit off about these guys, and not just for the reasons that you mentioned, but because people have been looking into their bank accounts. You know, nonprofit organizations are required to file a particular kind of tax return, the IRS Form 990, and there's certain things you're required to report, and they're required to be public. So anybody can go find the Ruth Institute's 990 form online. And some of us have been looking at the Southern Poverty Law Center for a few years. There's a book out called Making Hate Pay, which came out from my friend Tyler O'Neill some years ago. And he was reporting that they had a lot of money in offshore bank accounts. When he first wrote his book, it was $500 million. That's billion with a B, $500 million in offshore bank accounts in the Cayman Islands. Now, why does a U.S. nonprofit need to have $500 million in the Cayman Islands? One might ask, And so I noticed that in the reports that came out recently, that the FBI, accompanying the FBI's announcement here, is up to like $880 million, $100 million in offshore bank accounts. So now we're looking at $750 million. So there's been something hinky about this for quite a while. And so to find out that they were actually paying so-called informants within some of the most racist groups in America, that was shocking to find out. I mean, even I didn't know they had done that, or, I wouldn't have guessed that they had done that. But evidently, the event in 2017, which turned into a riot where someone was killed, the SPLC had a person inside that organization who was part of organizing the thing, who was organizing transportation and communications for the people who came to it. And so, they want to write that off as being, paid informants. But, it sure looks like they're orchestrating a violent event from which they can raise money. And by the way, that event, we believe here at the Ruth Institute, we believe that is the thing that precipitated us being not only placed on the hate list, we were in the hate list in 2013, but in 2017, our credit card processor dropped us without any warning whatsoever And we've always kind of thought it was related to that thing that happened in Charlottesville, and now I feel more confident that that's true, Bill. We never got really to the bottom of it, why all of a sudden, out of the blue, we get an email saying, we're not doing business with you anymore, you're bad guys. Wells Fargo told us you are bad guys, We never quite figured out what prompted it, but it happened right around the same time as that Unite the Right rally, that they're talking about now. And so that makes me wonder, maybe this was all part of their whatever their formula is, whatever their plan is that they're doing. Somehow we got caught up. Our little group got caught up in their whirlwind there.
Yeah, well, being listed by the SPLC was sort of like for the media anyway, and now apparently in certain segments of the corporate world, as you point out, it was like the good housekeeping seal of approval. If they listed you, you had to be a bad guy.
Right, 100%. So we lost our credit card processor. As you probably know, the guy who went to the Family Research Council and shot, and with the intention of murdering people, he got the information that FRC was bad people. He got that from the Southern Poverty Law Center. And nobody ever said, Southern Poverty Law Center is inciting violence. Something needs to be done. We need to stop. Meanwhile, our little organization is blocked in doing business with various people. And by the way, our credit card processor was only one of many incidents where we were blocked from doing certain things. We've tried to do business with different tech companies and things like that. They've told us no. We've never been allowed to monetize our YouTube channel, for example. A lot of Catholic YouTubers have ads on it, right? They've never allowed us to do that because we're bad guys. We're on that list, right? There have been a lot of consequences that have flowed from it, but the bottom line is my organization has never incited anyone to violence, ever. There's not the slightest evidence. And by the way, at the time that this incident happened, and I said this to John Stossel, who interviewed me in 2017, and that video has resurfaced on the internet, Morris D's salary at the time, the president of the Southern Poverty Law Center, his salary was more than my entire budget at that time. Okay? So that kind of say, what are these big guys picking on us? That's ridiculous, But they've continued to get away with it, and we are relieved that something's being done about it. A lot of other people are relieved that something's being done about it, because this is basically, they were acting as not a governmental organization, that would be too much, but the government, by coddling them, by not inquiring the way they should have inquired long ago, they've allowed this to grow into something much more violent and much more problematic than it would have been if ordinary standards were being applied.
The SPLC had its roots in the civil rights movement, or at least it was inspired by the civil rights movement. Is this a group that simply lost its way, or do you think it was a scam from the very beginning?
I'm not in a position to answer that. Most people who have looked at them believe that they were acting in good faith in the early years. Their strategy was a legal strategy to basically sue the Ku Klux Klan and related organizations, and to basically, what we might now call it lawfare, but to basically put them out of business with lawsuits and stuff. And so they're based in Alabama. And so you think, this big liberal organization, what are they doing in Alabama? Well, that's where they started their work, But now the tide has turned, and so the grand jury, is it a grand jury that indicts them? Anyway, the indictment has been handed down in the state of Alabama. They're going to be tried in the state of Alabama now. And so there's a certain poetic justice to that, I would say.
What's your feeling about how this will shake out? Do you think the charges will stick? Can the government get actual convictions?
I think they will get something to stick. Like I just said, the case is going to be tried in Alabama. That's a good sign for them, for the federal government to try this kind of case. Such a left-wing group that is so opposed to so many traditional Christian values, there's a good chance that they'll get the indictments. How long the thing will drag out, what it will actually look like, is hard to say. But for the time being, I suspect that one consequence will be that corporate America will be less likely to jump up and sign their names to the bottom of $1 million checks,
right,
the way they were in 2017. I think it will, at the very least, have that consequence.
Do you think that this will sort of have a liberating effect on more conservative organizations? Will the corporate world cease to take the SPLC's list? Will they take it less seriously?
I certainly hope so. I certainly hope so. And you may be aware that Mark Houck, who the FBI raided during the Biden administration, this is the pro-life activist who the FBI barged into his home, arrested him in front of his wife and 7 children,
right.
and of course he was ultimately acquitted of all charges. Well, now Mark Houck has received a very substantial settlement from the government. He sued the government for what they did to him. So the tide has turned, that's for sure. But we can't be complacent about this. This is simply because the Biden administration and the people around him are no longer holding the levers of power. Those people get their hands on the power again. Who knows what could happen at that point.
Jennifer Roback Morse, the Ruth Institute. How can people follow your work and your writings, which are numerous, of course? How do they get a hold of you?
You can join us over at ruthinstitute.org, or you can follow us on our YouTube channel, which you just type in Ruth Institute into the YouTube search bar, and we'll come right up. And you can subscribe to our newsletter list and receive a free PDF download where we talk about recovering from feminism, 5 gay myths. There are a number of ways that you can sign up for the Ruth Institute's newsletter and be connected to the Ruth Institute and all that we're doing.
Jennifer Roback Morse, thanks very much for taking time to talk about this. This is an interesting turn of events. It's sort of the new Jussie Smollett moment. Very interesting.
Well, thanks for having me, Bill. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening and supporting the Ruth Institute. Please check out our YouTube channel, Ruth Out and About, where you'll find all interviews with the Ruth Institute.